Okay, so after downloading BGEN Groom, go to Edit, Preferences, Install. Look for where you save BGEN Groom. Mine is here, bgengroom.zip. So click on the checkbox and you're all set. Perfect. So you find it in the same place in the end panel. Just press N, go to BGEN Hair. It's gonna be under on top of BGEN Flow. So you can just collapse BGEN Flow for now. Expand it, increase or reduce as you please. So I'm going to explain how this works by creating a fade hairstyle with beards. So I'm going to use hair caps because it makes the hairstyles you're going to create easier to manage. And hair caps are basically just extra polygon that follows your original mesh. So to create one, you can either model it on top or you can go into your mesh and select part of it. So just go into the side view here. So once you've selected the parts of the geometry you use as a hair cap, you just duplicate, Shift D, escape, press P, selection, and that selects into its own mesh. Select the mesh and mirror it. So I'm going to add a mirror modifier, click on merge and apply. So you have full hair cap here. Just going to expand this a bit so it's above the surface. And I'm going to create another hair cap for the beards. So I'm just going to select parts of the mesh where I want the hair to grow out of. I'm going to use the lasso one again. And I'm just going to name them hair cap and beard cap. Okay, put them in a new collection called hair. Okay, we're set. So to generate the hair, you have to make sure the surface you're generating from has UVs. So I'm just going to unwrap this and also unwrap the bottom. So I developed the generation system to work with masks. So I'm going to show you the workflow I use to manage all the masks I create. So I'm just going to extend half of the screen. So if the hair and the beard caps had materials before, you just want to remove them and make new ones. So you can name it hair cap, and for the beard, you can name it beard cap. So we're just going to create a density mask for the hair. So we add an image texture node, Shift A, image texture, and we create a new one, call it top hair density, and you can leave the resolution as 1024 by 1024, and we click OK. So the way a mask works is that on the black parts you have no hair generated, and on the white parts you have hair generated. So I'm just going to paint in where I want my hair to be generated from. Tab into texture paint mode, and on the end panel you just locate tools. You can mirror it, start to draw. So I'm just going to create a perfectly white mask to just cover the top part of the hair. A quick tip, so when you're making textures in Blender, you have to keep on saving all your images, unless if it refreshes, you're gonna lose some of the images you painted. So one thing I like to do is to right click on Save Images button and add to quick favorites. So when you press Q, you can just easily save all images and you're set. So if you press Q and Save All Images is not deactivated, that means you need to save your images. And if it's deactivated, you're all good. Let's create another mask for the side hairs. So we can just duplicate this one, delete, add new, call it side hair density. Okay, and then this one, you're just gonna paint in the side hairs. Okay, just gonna save all images and we're good. Now we're gonna create a mask for the beard too. Save this and create another one for the mustache. Duplicate this, delete, new, and we're just gonna draw the mustache density in. I'm just eyeballing it now. If you have a full realized character, it'll be easier to draw this in. Okay, so the reason I put the shader in solid and texture mode is because anytime we click on a texture, it changes and reveals what that texture is. So that just makes navigating through all this a lot easier. Okay, before we start generating here, I advise that you go to the render properties over here, and where you have curves, you change from strand to strips, and additional subdivision, make it 3. I choose strips because what you see in the viewports is what you see in the render. If it's on a strand, what you see on the viewports is different from what you see in the render. So this just makes the whole thing easier. Okay, let's start. So you select the mesh where you want to generate the hair from, and in the BGEN groom tab, you just click on the plus icon. You can create a new one, call it top hair. I would advise that you create a habit of actually naming the curved hairs and the modifiers so you can keep track of what you're working with. And we click OK. So we have a new hair. So all the hair you create on this mesh would show up here. Can hide from the render here, hide from viewports, and hide the selection. If this is deactivated like this, you cannot select the hair. And this system is very similar to the BGEN flow. You have your initialize, formers, and simulation. And under the initialize tab, you just click on generate guides, and you can select the density you made before, top hair density, and you can increase this to, let's say, 200. The smaller your objects, the more the value of the density has to be to see results. So we can increase this more to, let's say, 300. You can reduce it to whatever you want. Just gonna put this here. I'll say we're going for like a high top fade, so let's just leave it like this. Control points. For the short hair, you don't need this much. I can put maybe 6. If you're making longer hair, you can use 24 or 30. And yeah, I think this is good enough to start with, and just apply guides. So you have your guides here. To see the hair actually come out, you go in the initialize menu, expand it, and on the density map, you just select top hair density you created, and voila, you have hairs started emitting. Now you can change the settings in the deformers. Under hair strands, you can add more hair, let's say 100. And the same thing here, if your mesh is on the smaller side, you have to have a higher number of interpolated amounts, or you won't have a lot of hair on the top hair. And by default, you have the guide clump. You can deactivate it, and you have no clumps. Using the guide clump basically clumps the hair to the individual guides you created before. Since we're making a hairstyle like this, you can play with the guides a bit. In the clump profile, we can just increase it like this, and we're set for now. Yeah, another tip, in the sculpt mode, to make my workflow a bit easier, I added some of the tools I use the most into my Q panel. So you do that by just right clicking on it and adding to quick favorites. So I have a list of ones I use the most. So we're just gonna press Q and select comb, and also on the x-axis, and we can start combing. I usually like using projected because it works better for me. So we're just gonna comb this up like this, side, comb it up, just style it a bit. I'm gonna select the grow and shrink. Also click projected for this one, and this basically acts like a clipper. So you can hold control and shrink the hair or cut the hair, and you can just click regularly to grow it. Nice. Okay, just gonna reduce the height. Actually, it's a bit too high of a fade. A feature I added, if your mesh is on the smaller side, or if your mesh is like a regular size, so you can go into rescale hair, and the rescale factor can be 2. Okay, basically what that does is it scales it up and applies the scale and scales it back down with a factor of 2. Okay, another feature I added is in deformers, under more settings. If your hair strands are coming out of the mask, that means there's not too much geometry on your original mesh, and you can just increase the geometry by increasing the mesh subdivision. And when you click once, you can see it makes it tighter within the bounds of your mask. You can increase it one more time and we're good. Try not to make it too much if you don't have to. If everything conforms to your mask, you can leave it how it is. You don't need to add extra subdivision here. Okay, I'm just going to close down that menu, and we can start adding some nice effects. This is my favorite part. Well, first of all, we can add curl effect. Just click on toggle here, and we can start increasing the frequency. Just gonna raise this up a bit. So if the resolution isn't that much, you won't really see the effects when you go past a certain amount. So we can just increase the resolution and you start seeing more of the effects. I'm just gonna scale the radius a bit like this. Okay, random offset. And in the hair strands, I'm just going to reduce the root tip and width again, make it 0.2, 1. Okay, and I can increase the viewport amount again, let's say 500. Okay, so because of the kind of hairstyle I'm creating, I might not want to guide it just to the clumps because I want it to be a bit more free. And you have some options with how you want your hair to be clumped. So if you just use the guide clump, it's going to guide to the clumps. But if you also activate interpolated clump, you can have smaller clumps within the original guide clump, and you can increase this and reduce this. It's going to turn down my viewport amount to 0.25, so the performance is improved. And the good thing with this is if you deactivate the guide clump and still just have the interpolated clump, you can now play with just an interpolated clump and have a lot of hair, or if you reduce it, you can just have few individual clumps here and there. So I'm just going to use the interpolated clumps, make more of it like this, and I can increase the curl frequency actually just a bit more. We're starting to see some of the hair come alive. Now to just nail this home, I'm going to add noise. Activate it. That's a bit crazy. It's going to reduce the noise width a bit, increase frequency, and yeah, we have this. Just gonna put this back on 1. Oh, that's a lot of hair. Can reduce this to 250. So if you're grooming your hair and the scene is a bit too slow, you can go into initialize, and under or beside the initialize tab, click on low poly. So you can just move this around, make it move forward, backward, and activate it. And you have that. Or you can also just reduce the viewport amount, so you can just get a general gist of what the hair looks like, and the performance is a lot better this way. Okay, I'm just gonna style this a bit more. So I have a top hair I'm kind of happy with, so we can go to creating the side hairs. So it's the same process again. So just select the geometry where you want the hair to be emitted from. In this case, it's still the same geometry. Go over to add, and this time I'm still going to create a new one because there's different settings. I'm just going to name this side hair. Also name the modifier side hair. And it's created. So you click on side hair, and then the initialize, go to generate guides. Now we still have the density from the top hair, so we're just going to switch that out with a side hair density, and it's generated from here. Again, just give it a density of about 200 thereabouts. That's a bit too much, so 150. Reduce the hair length way more than this, and the control points, it's short hair, so we just need like 4 actually, or even less. I'm just gonna leave it at 4 for now, and we can drop this down quite a bit more, and that should be good. Okay, so we apply the guides, and same thing again in initialize. Also select the side hair density, and we have this coming out like this. Here, first of all, let me just deactivate the clump because we don't need the hairs to clump on the side, so we can just deactivate this. And we can make the size 0.2, the tip 0.1, like that. Same thing as always. You can just bring the density up to, let's say, 250. See how that looks. And as you can see, some of the hair is coming out from the mask. So again, go to more settings, and the mesh subdivision, increase it by 1, and that seems to be good. Just increasing 1 more for it to conform a bit better. So that is set. We're just going to go into groom, click the hair you want to groom, and tap groom. Just gonna comb this down to follow the hair. Okay, a quick tip, if you want to add more geometry from the generated ones. Okay, so a quick tip, if you want to add more guides from the ones that were generated, in curve shape, have this 3 checked. So it's going to follow the guides, follow the number, and follow the rest. If you don't have it checked, it's just going to create its own axis. Just remember to have this 3 checked, the length, shape, and point count. So we can just add some more to fill up some empty spaces. Right here, and go back to combing. I want to bring down some of the hair a bit more on the sides, so grow, shrink. Just going to reduce the length of some of the hair, basically cutting it, and just to have that nice transition. So at this point, it's just a balancing act actually. And in the formers, if you want to increase the density of the hair, you have that under the settings, the more settings, and you can just increase the density. Now this looks weird because the density uses the clump profile of the guide clump. So you can just increase the guide clump all the way here, and yes, so we have the density increased. Okay, so we have part of the haircut. Just to see it a bit better, I'm just going to increase the interpolation amounts. Let's say 500. Okay, that's set. To appreciate this more, let's just go into the viewport mode. Okay, it's still a bit rough, but we can work on that. With the hair caps, the good thing is you can make them transparent. So I'm just going to do that here. So in the shader, I'm just going to turn down the alpha to 0. If it's just black, you have to go into the material properties, scroll down, and in blend mode, you can make this alpha blend, and you have transparent hair. And you can also do the same for the beards. I'm just gonna play and try to style the hair a bit more. Okay, now I'm just going to change up the materials a bit. The material here controls which material is actually on the hair, and the material here is just the one you're editing at the point. So make sure both of them match up to see the effects. So here I'm just going to make this a lot darker, so the fade isn't looking too hot. So I'm just going to go back in, click on side here, groom, and try to fix that. And once you have your guides nailed down, you can just add your noise modifier to it. That's a bit much. Reduce the noise width. Okay, we have some nice hair. Let's go back to shader view. Yeah, I'm just gonna increase the density. Under hair strands and more settings, we have density. Keep in mind the clump of the density is attached to the guide clumps, so that it's not bunching up at random points. You can just increase the guide clump to be full since we don't have guide clump for the rest of the hair. Okay, now let's move to the beard. So you select the beard cap, click the plus icon, create new, and the curve name beard hair. Curve modifier, I would name the modifier beard hair again. Okay, so we have this. Just before we start, just initialize, make sure the mask is on beard density, and for this one we can generate or we can just start adding. You have to add quite a bit for it to work properly. Instead, just gonna click on generate guides and increase the density to, let's say, 100. That's still too small. So as this is added, I noticed that the hair is a bit big, so we can just go to rescale with a factor of 2 and click OK, and we see more being formed. So we go, oh, it's still using side hair density, my bad. Change it to beard density instead. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, just make it 120. Hair length, bring that down a bit. Maybe this is good. I'm looking for kind of full beard. Control points, I think we can use 6. 6 would be good, and apply. Okay, so I'm just going to go into the hair strands, reduce the width to 0.2, or that's a bit small, 0.4. Leave the tip width to 2. Let's just comb the beard. Activate symmetry, comb. Just style it quite a bit and increase the interpolation amount to about 200. See how that looks. It's clumped a bit too aggressively, so we can go on the clump and increase this, increase the fall off. And since the curve ends are a bit too uniform, you can go down to trim, and on the length variation, just increase this to just make it look less perfect and clinical. I'm just gonna comb this out a bit more, shape it up just like this. Bump this up to 400. And yeah, so let's start adding some effects. Include interpolated amounts, increase it, drop down the menu, and under curl, it's gonna add a slight curl to it, not too heavy. Increase the radius like this, just to make it a bit more messy, and also add some noise. Oh, that's a bit too aggressive. I'll drop this down. If you want more finer noise details, you can increase the resolution and drop this down a bit more like this, and we can continue combing the hair. Here I can see that some of the hair is coming out from the mask, so under hair strands I can increase the mesh subdivision by 2, and it conforms a bit better. So yeah, we have that. Okay, so let's add in the mustache. So we click on the beard cap, and again, go plus icon, curve name it mustache hair, modifier name mustache hair. So we click the mustache density. This is a bit square, so I'm going to change it up a bit. Texture paint. So we click on mustache here and initialize. Under here you add the mustache density and we can start. Just click on groom. I just make this low poly for now to add my guides. Should be good. I'll turn down low poly again. On the hair strands in the interpolation, let's do 200. Roots width, bring it down to 0.2. And then the clump, it's a bit aggressive, so increase this a bit. And once again, it's coming out from the mask. So we just increase the mesh subdivision by 2, and that seems to be all good. We can add more. Just comb this out a bit. So yeah, those are just the basics on how to use BGEN Groom. I know there are a lot of settings here, and so for that reason, I would try my best to put out more videos making more hairstyles, just exploring what the add-on can offer. One last thing I would say is when you're using this, always try to close the tabs you're not using, unless it can get a bit confusing. So just close out the tabs. I've tried to put everything in a nice little box to make it easier. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful. I made a few more variations to that hairstyle, and I'm going to include the demo files in my Patreon, so just check it out in the link below. Once again, thank you for watching and have a good one. Take care.